Okay, let's start at the very end there. 30 seconds intro. Go for it.
Me? Okay.
Yes.
Nick Rosa, Technology Innovation Lead at Accenture. Spent the last 7 years building up the metaverse practice globally, and now I lead the technology innovation offerings at Accenture in EMEA. Nice to meet you.
Wonderful.
Oh, and I'm here.
And he has a book.
To present my book, which is Understanding the Metaverse, a Business and Ethical Guide, published by Wiley.
Every second over 30 costs you $1,000.
Okay.
Mark, who the heck are you?
Hi, everyone. Mark Masongsong, CEO and co-founder of UrbanLogiq, a Vancouver-based company. We build data analytics platforms for government. So we take data from all across different government departments and jurisdictions, and then we use machine learning and deep learning to model community behavior, help them understand economic patterns, transportation, infrastructure needs, public safety, etc.
Oh, I was almost going to get a $10,000 check there. Niamh, who are you?
Well, I'm not a rapper like these two. They're talking very quickly, aren't they? So kia ora, my name's Niamh. I'm from the Foresight Institute. I'm Chief of Innovation and Strategy there. We focus on molecular machines, biotechnology, neurotech, computation like security and cryptography.
Really close.
We do really cool things all the time.
Awesome, awesome. And she pronounces her name in a very cool way because it's Gaelic.
Niamh, yeah.
Exactly. I
Not
knew
phonetic.
it instantly when I saw it. Great. Niamh, I'm going to ask you to start. Give us a high-level overview. And by the way, two things actually before we start.
Yeah.
One, we've agreed to disagree. We've agreed that a panel that all agrees with each other kind of sucks. It's lame, it's boring. We're going to have some fights up here. That book is going to be used as a weapon before we're done. We'll see how it goes. Two, I'll call on somebody for a question for them to start, but I expect everybody to kind of jump in and say a few words here and there because we want some back and forth and flow. Niamh, kick us off.
All
Big
right.
issues in AI and ethics.
And we want to make it interactive as well.
Shut up. I'm talking.
yes.
I'm just joking.
Come on, man.
You're right. You're right. You're right. Niamh, you're starting.
Okay, the big overview is we've come a long way. We haven't realized the full potential of AI. AI, in my mind, is something that not just takes away jobs and makes us more efficient as human beings. It actually optimizes us. And I don't think we've figured that out yet. And so the idea behind it is that we can create flourishing futures for all. I think that's the world that we want to create.
But what are the ethical issues with AI?
Well, we have issues around privacy. We have issues about how LLMs are essentially built. Language models, as you know, English currently is the predominant builder. We've got the Bible is being used to build a lot of LLMs just because it's free and on the internet. That's kind of crazy. That's not actually everyone's belief systems. We need to delve a lot deeper. Also, we've got a very short timeline. Foresight operates on the notion that within 2 to 5 years, we're probably going to have an AGI. And what does that mean for us, right? That's pretty scary if it doesn't go our way, if it's not cooperative. And so that's like a really big, scary thing that we want to build consciousness into so that we can cooperate and can find a new and nicer way of being.
Other guys,
These
big
two build
issues.
products, and so they're going to come at it from a very product-centric. Go for it. Yeah.
For me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. My point of view is that the biggest threat that we have right now is the reality bending of the system, the problem of potential mass manipulation. And if you see about the legislation that right now has been passed in the United States, there's absolutely zero mention about the possibility of manipulation using AI, which is a big problem. And I'm talking about it also in my book. And I believe that this is something that we should all pay attention to. And I think that the only thing that we can do in order to raise, to fight this, is to raise collective awareness, to make our politicians aware of the problem, and to make our voice to be heard.
Because politicians solve everything.
Well, not everything, but at the end of the day, we have to be informed.
It is how we work. Exactly. I agree. Mark?
I think for me, two things. One is the asymmetric access to AI. So it's going to be hugely powerful, but not everyone's going to have access to it. So if there's already a gap in income and wealth and power, at the current rate of who has access to it, that is only going to get worse and exponentially worse unless we do something about it. Which leads to the second problem is I think we do have to have some sort of intervention by government on this. The problem is governments, and I'm not taking shots, I used to work for government is not equipped to understand this. So how do you regulate something when you fundamentally do not understand it? In fact, very few people on planet Earth understand it.
Exactly, and government fundamentally doesn't understand a lot of stuff that they're actually regulating and all that stuff, but it is challenging. Niamh, I think you want to talk about scraping, because that's one of the ways, you talked about the King James Version of the Bible, right? I mean, like, how do LLMs get their intelligence? How does AI derive its intelligence? And a lot of it is just by taking everything that we put online.
Yeah, I mean, Foresight, so Christine Pedersen, who was one of our founders, she coined the term open source. And so for us, we're actually for a very open internet. We think that as soon as you start making things a bit closed and not transparent, it just makes things worse. So that's very big for us. And then I guess if you're talking about the Bible, there's really big issues right now. So you can ask an LLM what's greater, 1.13 or 1.8, and it will say, well, the wrong one. And that's because of the way that the verses in the Bible have trained it to operate. So there's lots of things right now where we're not getting like the most accurate results, I guess. But, you know, biochemical warfare are pretty scary. I can keep going. There's lots of awful things.
What is greater, 1.13 or 1.8? We're going to ask ChatGPT.
Yeah,
Meanwhile,
but who uses ChatGPT anymore anyway? Like, Claude is so much better. Can we just talk about that for a second? Like, it's so much better.
Excellent. Nick, I want to turn to you. You talked about government. And a question I have, I legit have this, and I struggle with this. Is it even worth talking about these risks? Because we know that so many companies are jumping in this. It's an arms race. They're building the next biggest system, the next most powerful system. We see whether you're a self-driving company and you're releasing beta software out on the road. And we're not even talking about rogue nations or just other nations and have different rules, or organizations that are doing things secretly. How on earth can we police ethics in AI?
We can't. Yeah. Simply, we can't.
Done. Drop the mic off the stage.
The fact is that there are so many problems that are connected to what we're building right now that are probably more deeply interconnected to how we operate as a society. Like, for example, right now, there's no fair way to pay artists, writers, painters, musicians that see their work to be ingested into the system that are building those machines, talking about the scraping that you were saying before. And this comes up to the fact that right now, for example, there's no fair way to be an artist and make a good living unless you're Taylor Swift. So we don't have this kind of infrastructure in place, and obviously right now we are facing the consequences with a machine that is literally siphoning all the content that they can find in order to create intelligent systems. So the genie is out of the bottle. The only thing that we can do right now is try to, damage control.
Mark, I want to come to you on the same question in just a second. I want to have a show of hands right here real quick. Who here feels it's okay, raise your hand if you feel it's okay for LLMs to scrape whatever data they can on the open internet? Interesting. I think we have about a third of the people, maybe a third disagree, I'm not sure. I've probably written 25 million words over the course of my career. Most of them are online. I'm kind of okay with AI using them as long as I get some benefit on the back end. But yeah. Mark, I want to go back to you.
Why do you need benefit on the back end?
Say again?
Why do you need to benefit on the back end?
It's nice. I don't need actual money for it, but I can use ChatGPT and I can get cool stuff from it, and it can help me in my job and do other stuff like that. But I'm okay donating all my words to AI as long as I benefit as well. Do you agree?
We are doing it every day with Google.
Yeah.
We're feeding systems with our data in order to get in exchange something else. We're doing it with Google. We're doing it with Microsoft systems. We're doing it with every company that's basically we are the product. So why not doing it also with AI? The problem is that the kind of data that they're using, when it comes also to, okay, my taste and behavioral data about my movies and my music and the stuff that I like to do or I like to listen or I like to read is fine. But when it comes to checking my biometric data or getting access to my smart ring data while I'm looking at a video of a car that maybe I want to purchase and then eventually get an AI assistant that is going to push me.
You
that
seem
product.
excited right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very excited because I'm talking to the public. But if you think about a system that is able to understand when you're excited and engaged, eventually keep engaging you on that specific kind of topic, that's a problem. And that's where, we need to talk about this kind of conversation.
What's interesting is that, and some other panel mentioned this as well, like, we don't control AI. We don't own AI, most of us in the room here. But if I had an AI that was under my control and was operating for my benefit, changes the calculus somewhat, right? Mark? Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Mark, thank you. We haven't had any disagreement yet. Nobody has started screaming at somebody else.
Well, I've got one
Go
thing
ahead,
to say.
Niamh.
I think it should be the responsibility, I feel like there's a role for governments to play, but I feel like technologists also need to take a responsibility for when what they're building maybe doesn't go the way that they envisage it to go. And there's ways to either shut it down, change it, pause it. I think that's a huge thing. And then also...
On that topic, and keep your second thought, on that topic, Mark, you were talking earlier about actually taking products off the market that you determined were actually unethical. Talk about that briefly.
So I think if you look at Europe, so Europe recently passed the EU AI Act, and one of the things they did is they defined different levels of risk with escalating levels of controls. Part of the problems in the United States and Canada, which is where UrbanLogiq normally functions, is we haven't passed such laws. So one of the weird things that ends up happening is if you're a data scientist and you have any degree of a moral code, you look at some of the stuff you're producing and you're aware of how dangerous this could be if someone else abuses your work. And so one of the things that we ended up doing at UrbanLogiq is we created an internal self-governance structure, somewhat modeled a little bit on the Europeans. So if it's kind of a low-risk thing, so for example, we predict traffic patterns, not too worried about there being an ethnic bias in traffic lights. So in those types of things, as long as statistically accurate, that's one thing. The moderate level are things where, for example, some of the work we do is we identify where there might be amenity gaps. So which community neighborhood should get the next childcare center. We're doing this right now in City Burnaby, for example. There's a moderate level of risk of we're now deciding who gets what tax dollars. And in those cases, we don't, so one of the challenges with AI is there's an inverse relationship between how explainable something is and how powerful models are. So this is kind of a difficult choice. Do you want it to be accurate or do you want it to understand it? Because you can't have both in a lot of cases. So on the moderate risk thing, what we've done is modeled it off of California. We've identified certain things the model should not be allowed to consider, ethnicity, income, etc. And we don't explain how the model works. We don't understand it. What we can, though, is we can audit it to prove this model does not have any ethnic bias. So that's the moderate level. And then the high level are things like, we've been approached, can you do things like crime prediction, identify who should be arrested? That level of, if you get that wrong, you can never take that back. And so that model, even though it means we cannot use the most powerful tools, we banned ourselves from using certain deep learning models, things that are really powerful, but we don't understand. And in a number of cases, we've found actually we can really accurately predict where the next crime is going to be. But whenever governments have come to us and said, can we have access to that, until we can prove to ourselves there wasn't some sort of an ethnic bias in the data, which you just cannot do, we've turned down the contract and said, you can have your money back, but we're taking the system offline because we can't prove to ourselves that it works.
And how many companies are that principled is a good question. You don't have to answer that, but the obvious implication is not all of them, that's for sure, right? Niamh, you were going to say something else. Do you remember?
Oh, yeah. I was, but I feel like we can go on this tangent now, you know?
You can go wherever you want to go. You have the mic.
Well, I was just going to mention that we have started an AI safety grant scheme at Foresight Institute. So Foresight Institute is slightly different to what these two do because we're a non-profit that's existed for about 40 years. And we really support pre-R&D. And great people and great projects have come out of it. We break down a lot of silos, and it's like a testing ground, you know? And so we now have an AI safety grant where we give out $1.5 million US every year. I'm one of the co-directors of it. And we do it for like three key things: neuro for AI, so whole brain emulations and BCIs, cryptography, security. Those are our 3 key areas. And we're really trying to fund underfunded or underexplored areas so that we can actually like build these things and then grow them. So I just want to do a little interjection there and say
Very
that.
cool, very cool. I just got a
because-
note that we have 2 hours left, so we can go deep and... No, I'm just joking.
Oh, really? Okay. Cool.
The shocked faces from the audience. No.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I guess at Foresight, we're super interested also in neuro for AI. So say we're talking about responsible AI and maybe, we have a very short AGI timeline. We're building out a whole brain emulation fast grant system with a grand prize. Currently, I've managed to get nearly half of it funded. It's 20 million in total. And so that's pretty good for a very underexplored area. I'm pretty stoked about that. But by doing that, we will then be able to exist on the same platform as humanity, which is like another way of approaching safe AI is actually that how do we upload humanity? And that's something that we're exploring at the moment.
Lots of ethics in there, exactly.
A lot of ethics in there.
Involuntarily.
I mean, there's a lot
Nick?
of... Oh, yeah, go.
I have a provocative question for all of you.
Yeah.
Okay, we are unable to agree if some animals... Yesterday we were talking about guilty pleasures, and we were talking about octopuses, like a grilled octopus.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a guilty pleasure because you know that it's smart, and we are unable to agree if those animals are conscious or not. How are we going to be able to agree if a system that we are building is conscious? And the second...
We first have to figure out what consciousness means.
Exactly.
There's no agreed upon term for that, just like there's never been any full map of the human brain.
Exactly.
We only just got a firefly last week.
And the second provocative question for all of you is, once this genie is going to be out of the bottle and we're going to create AGI, who's going to be accountable? The machine or the creator of the machine? Because the machine is going to start taking decisions, and probably those decisions are going to be so different from a standpoint of frame of thinking from us. How are we going to be able to get that machine accountable for what it's going to think?
But hold up, the point of an AGI is that it then is like, it's us. Okay, let me do hands. I have to do hands.
Microphone.
It's us, and then it becomes. It's us. It's an emulation. It's not us forever.
Okay.
It's an emulation.
So what you're saying is that we're responsible initially, but not later, just like a parent with a kid.
Well, yeah, like it's, we're always responsible, right? Like everyone's responsible all the time, but I'm just saying this is not a conversation about responsibility, this is a conversation about control, I think, potentially, and it has freedom at that point.
I don't know. Let's talk about control. More and more decisions are being made with AI, whether those are in government, whether they're personal decisions, whether they're made in corporations. It'd be interesting to have a tracker. What percentage of decisions are being made by AI and making that visible? Should that be something that people know about generally? Mark, maybe let's start with you.
Sure. I think default, yes. So I think the general rule is there, especially to gain public support, there should be transparency around how governments, for example, are making decisions, what decisions are impacted, and how. The caveat I would say is there is a genuine problem of gamification. So, for example, if you know that this is the way the system is identifying who a serial killer is, you literally know this is what I need to do in order for you not to catch me. So I think the best example, and one thing I would say is we're starting to rediscover things we've already solved. This is a solved problem. In government, for example, most things are supposed to be public, but there's a recognized domain of national security where certain things are classified. It doesn't mean the intelligence agencies can do whatever they want. What normally, like that structure is...
Theoretically.
True, yes. And that's why none of this is going to be perfect, but there are structures, right? Yes. So there are security cleared government bodies that they have access to what are doing, and they oversee these things. So things like that where for legitimate reasons, and they have to be specified in law, these are the things that if you were to disclose this publicly, the whole thing would fall apart. Someone should have the authority to oversee that. But I think that there's structures that we could put in place.
Such that if there was a court case, you could explain all the things that went into that. It'd be interesting as well for like a hiring manager or something like that, right? Go ahead, Niamh.
Well, sorry, I have a cool thing to share. So Jamie Joyce of the Plurality Institute came up with a decision-making tool which is currently being used in government in America. I don't know how it would work under an MMP system. I'm from New Zealand, so Aotearoa, it's not the same. But what she's figured out is using this AI, they can figure out where both the Democrats and the Republicans share similar values, and so they can reach decisions quicker using this AI because it points out what maybe they have in common versus what they have, and that's kind of super interesting, right? Because we're already talking about a binary system. Code is black and white, essentially. It's like numbers. And so, yeah, Jamie Joyce's Plurality Institute cannot stress it enough because it's going to be interesting to see where else it goes. It's also focusing on a positive, right, versus the negative, which is kind of unusual in this space.
Especially positive if they actually listen to it.
Well, it's worked. Like, she's got results from it, which is pretty cool.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a few minutes left. I have more questions, but maybe you've got better questions than I do. So do we have some questions? We have one in the back. I will literally run out to you. If you can meet me halfway, we'll make this quicker. Here you go. Please keep it brief.
Yeah, thank you. You did talk a lot about the role of the governments in regulating, putting control over stuff. What role would you give to the AI practitioner?
So I think so I think that there is a moral responsibility, and this is where I think the good news is I think because in the absence of regulation, we are seeing companies self-regulate, but I think it shouldn't be left up to them. So I think in the end, the right paradigm that seems to fit is government should define. I'm not a fan of like parts of the European approach where they ban certain types of technologies, but very similar to the things are now. Certain things you're not allowed. You're not allowed to impersonate people. You're not allowed to commit fraud. So a lot of the existing laws can just be applied to AI, and I think that would be the way to do it. Is society decides what are the negative effects of any type of tool. You're not allowed to do, whether it be AI or emails. You're not allowed to do certain things. Tell someone to kill someone, commit fraud. And at that point, I think that becomes the moral code. That democracy agrees these are the banned use cases, and then AI practitioners are held to that standard. Because in absence of anything else.
So in different countries, it may work out differently. For instance, in Russia, if you're an oligarch, then windows are very dangerous to be nearby. And if AI is in charge, you may fall out. I don't know. One more question, briefly.
Oh, hi. To whoever wants to answer it, I'm curious, to the extent that you know, in the context of government, are there discussions happening around like mass automation of like any kind of white collar information transformation tasks, like mass layoffs, this kind of thing? Like, where's that at?
I can speak for my experience and the things that we're seeing with the conversation that we're having with a lot of companies. The kind of structure of the companies is mutating from a pyramid to a rhomboid, and is shrinking as well. But the interesting thing, and I don't know, there was a beautiful article that came out last week from Harvard Business Review about the fact that AI is not going to give you a competitive advantage. It's going to be more about like a sort of a leveler for all the companies that are going to use AI. If everybody's going to use AI, basically it's going to level the playing field for most of the company. Where the competitive advantage is going to be is where the companies are going to identify where the human factor plays a role in the competitive advantage, and they're going to use AI in order to amplify that competitive advantage that comes from the human people. So we see potentially a competitive advantage that comes from eventually allowing people that have more direct contact with the customer, for example, human touch with the customer, to be free from doing all the kind of administrative work and back-end work and Excel filling work that they were doing before, to be more human, which is also one of the conversations that we had before in the previous panels.
But also, don't worry, like super, super near future, because remember how long contracting takes in government.
I thought you were going to say don't worry because soon it'll be uploaded and it'll be over, no worries. Excellent. Because we're an ethical panel, we've been told that our time is up and we're actually leaving. So anyways, have a great day. Please thank all the panelists.